Hier ist Josh Lee.
Wow. All right, man. Cool. Good afternoon, everyone. It's my pleasure to be here. My name is Josh Lee. I'm the co-founder of Kepler Wallet, as well as Osmosis. And yeah, so obviously we've been through a lot in the past week or so. So to be honest, I think, I kind of thought about like, what do I really want to talk about in front of a bunch of cosmonauts that just went through a lot, and I think I kind of wanted to step back a little bit, where rather than kind of the concrete features and things like that, kind of going back to digesting some of the thoughts that I've been having recently in the past 6 months or so. And processing a lot of the growth that has happened in the Cosmos ecosystem, and more specifically in the context of Keplr wallet and building a wallet for the ecosystem, and where I personally see things going. So as you guys know, wallet is, wallet and an account is kind of the one Lego block of a blockchain or on-chain crypto user. And I think it's kind of like the foundation of an on-chain identity, and wanted to kind of expand on that on where we're going on with that, with Keplr wallet. So yeah, so what's in an account? I think it could mean a lot of different things, and fundamentally it's a public key, right? It's unreadable, and that's my public key for my doxed account that I tend to use a lot of. That's my primary blockchain Cosmos account that I use. And when I query, my public key can also mean a lot of different things as I get more specific into the chains and the wallets and things like that. And when I query my address into Osmosis, it tells me that I am also account number 40638, which kind of sounds like you're like a prisoner in this like blockchain, and give you numbers and stuff. And then obviously you have the Osmo1 address, but but the public key is kind of what kind of ties me together, at least for the blockchains that have the same derivation paths, the coin types, right? But obviously we're in the internet of blockchains and not one blockchain. So, this is also my Cosmos account, where I have a different account number and a different Cosmos address. But obviously, my public key remains the same, because Osmosis and Cosmos uses the 118 coin type, and it derives the address almost in this exact same manner up until that very last step, where you convert that public key into a Bec32 address, which is the Cosmos one, Osmosis one, Osmo one, etc., etc. Now, I think that is like one definition of what a blockchain user is. And obviously the same thing for stars as well. And I think, kind of stepping back a little bit, crypto's been around for, I'd say like 10 years, I guess, and we've had different ways of showing a user or an information on a user for the past many years. And I think the norm so far has been the block explorer. You go look for an address, and this is what you're shown. And this is, I guess, one way to show what an address is and what a user's account is. But I think, and this is mine, by the way, where you can see everything that I do. But lately, one thing I've started to notice is wallets kind of taking a different stance at not just showing information, but being a curator of information as well. Because at the end of the day, my ETH address, and in my case on Ethereum, dojimos.eth, which is my ENS name, not only holds a bunch of tokens, but also holds a bunch of NFTs. I could be part of different DAOs, and many more things, or maybe I'm a lead guild in this new game that launched on Ethereum, et cetera, et cetera. But for this specific context, it's just showing my wallet address as kind of my NFT gallery profile, right? Which is one way to kind of curate the information that's on chain and show who I am as a user on the blockchain. Now, this is what we typically see as a user when we query a user on Cosmos/Minscan. And so far, I think we've been focusing around building a user profile around tokens and token balances and transacting on delegations and undelegations. Maybe a little bit on governance modes, but I think a little bit less so. But I think what's interesting here is, I guess we're missing an emoji there, but I think what's interesting, one interesting thing that's been happening is the on-chain, block space used to be a barren desert where, all you had was like people just holding tokens. Maybe you'll send it to an exchange with this memo, and then someone else will buy it, transfer it out to a wallet, and then what's the most you can do? Back in 2019, Cosmos was at the most you'd be able to stake, redelegate to another validator, and then if you're more of an active user, you would participate in governance and things like that. But I think it feels a little bit different today, where there's so many more things you can do on chain than you were able to 2 or 3 years ago. And I think that's a critical difference and a step. Obviously, it's a step in the right direction. But I think this puts a lot more mandate and responsibility as someone who builds wallets and user interfaces. Because previously, something like this could make sense for, it's kind of a one-size-fits-all solution. You have a bunch of transactions, you have a list of tokens, you have your delegations and things like that. But once your on-chain profile contains more information than just token transfer, staking, and governance, I think as someone who builds front-end interfaces, I think there's a mandate to build not only application-specific blockchains, but application-specific front-ends for these blockchains as well. So just a little heads up on what we're building is I think we want Keplr to kind of feel more like a playground just as much as the way that blockchains have evolved. It went from holding money on your wallet and account. I think it's going to go more towards being able to do different things. Now, I think this also probably means that we're going to have to curate some of these applications that exist. But at the very least, the experience to using that would be extremely seamless, right? And yes, I know every time we ask, like, hey, what do you guys want from Keplr? I think the first thing that we always get is dark mode. And I know I've been saying that it's coming for the past 6 months or so, but it is really coming. And we have Delvin here, who's kind of the main guy that's building it. So maybe if you have any more ideas, you can kind of reach out to him. But yeah. But like I said, the on-chain lands went from a barren desert to something that represents more of a playground. I think there's so many more things you can do today, where you can ape into a token, you can mint a bunch of NFTs, and now we have Juno, where people are building permissionless CosmWasm contracts and front ends to go with it. At this point, there's so many things that you can build and people have built that it's hard to keep track of what you can do anymore. And for our interfaces, I think we'd like things to feel more like a playground than I don't know, like a stock brokerage UI where you're just here is your money and here's how it's doing. And yeah. And I think the other way of looking at identity and account is now with a lot of on-chain activity and content that's happening, I guess there's always been activity, but I think there so far has been activity that happened off-chain that has finally kind of reached the on-chain level, where things get recorded at an on-chain level, whereas previously people were using blockchains, but a lot of it was just on the off-chain layer. But what this also means is your account sort of tells a story at this point, right? And I know this probably wouldn't apply for everyone because there's a lot of people that switches wallet every 6 months or so. I typically just use my wallet, just exercise a good security around that. But what this also means is like, I was able to make the first IBC Atom transaction in the entire world, and that was like one of the most like proudest moment in my, working in Cosmos moment, because it's like I got to do it on Keplr wallet, which was a product that I was part of making, and I've been around in Cosmos since 2017. So like we've been waiting for this like 2 or 3 years, and getting to do that on my own wallet on a product that I helped build was a very like satisfying moment, right? And that moment is recorded on chain, and maybe for someone who's just querying a blockchain, it's all that event is the transaction hash of EB95EE4B, so on and so on. But I know that that has a lot of meaning, and maybe for some of the people that are close to me, maybe that has some of that additional context, knows that that transaction hash can mean more than a blob of text. And when I think about it, it's like, what is the right place to put some of these contextual information, and like where is the best place to present that? To be honest, I can't find any better place than a wallet to kind of go into that direction and provide that contextual information. Because at the end of the day, when a user wants to know, it's like, when a user is using a blockchain, I think the first tool that they kind of grab onto is the wallet, right? So for the wallet to provide more than just a blob of text and provide meaning and provide a story into kind of your crypto journey and what you are doing, I think is kind of this direction that we are heading towards. And a lot of these transactions that you make on chain is a story about yourself, right? Where someone with a sequence number of 2 who has just made 2 transactions, and someone who has made thousands of transactions for 3 years. I think while it's not it's not a 1 or 0 in terms of legitimacy and reputation, but it's not a binary choice, but I think there's a gradient of trust for someone who has obviously used the same account for 2-3 years, who's been around. Even though I don't know who owns this account, I think it's more likely that I'll be able to trust this guy than this new account that just has 2 transactions that was made 2 days ago. And obviously there's the story of ups and downs, right? Like I had to sell my UST like 2 days ago for a lot less than what UST was 2 weeks ago, and that's recorded on chain. That exchange rate is there, and to be honest, it's like right now maybe that feels very painful, but maybe looking back 2 years ago at this story of my transaction hashes, I was like, oh yeah, like remember back in 2020 when Luna blew up? Like those were very interesting days, and like trying to think through all that, like maybe that will just feel like my first IBC transaction, right? And that that story just kind of lives as part of that context for that transaction where I'm selling that UST for Osmo for a lot lower, a deep pegged UST. And it can also tell a story of what you like and you don't like, because if you go back to the interface of a block explorer, it tells you the tokens that you have and the balance of it. But it can also theoretically could be grouped into, it's like when there is a world where 100 tokens exist, which tokens you hold and which tokens you don't hold could have a lot of meaning. And I think that's something that the wallet should be able to tell, right? So I think that's another cool direction that we can go towards. But I think what gets even more interesting is kind of the next stage of wallets, because here it's about you and yourself and what you hold and what you've done, and your kind of like self-actualization of like, oh, I did this 1 year ago, or I'm doing this now. Whereas here, I think this is like who you are in the context of everyone else, right? I think things get really interesting here. We're in the the Kepler user group is obviously a mix of users of wide variety of chains, applications, holder of different tokens. And I think each person will have different kind of personalities and profiles when you kind of take this entire group as a, kind of like a sample, right? And kind of going from this like Web 2 to Web 3 context, I still think Web 3 is kind of this like gimmicky marketing word, but I have put some thought into like, hey, what is like the fundamental difference between the two? And I think I've come to realize that in like this like Web 2 world where you don't own any of your data, only Google knows who you are in the context of all the other Google users. And basically, they sell access to who this person is in this Google database for money so you can target them for ads. Whereas here, it's like, maybe Kepler will be able to provide some of these POAPs that tell you, it's like, hey, you are like the top 1% IBC transactor. Like, man, like you send a lot of IBC transactions, here's a little badge for you. And we have a feature to do that, but whether you want that or not completely depends on whether you want to take that, not the hands of some megacorp. And the other the other part of that is, let's say I love the contents that are on YouTube. I just hate its algorithm. And I think Spotify has a better sorting algorithm for recommending me the videos that I might like next. Right now, because like the Web 2 world is very like siloed in to kind of platforms where you either have the Meta platform of like Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, so on, and then you have Google. You can't really mix and match, right? And I think kind of the best part about the Web3 ecosystem that we're building is like, hey, I have my data here, but I don't like what you're offering me as in terms of the feature. I can just kind of take my data and ask this person to do the exact same service that I personally feel is more valuable for me. And I think that's kind of like the key differences. Maybe I kind of like went on a sidetrack a little bit, but I think that's a fundamentally very important difference because as someone who's building Kepler, I think building a wallet is kind of that central point where all users gather. And for us, we really want to, give you more context on who you are in the context of the cosmonaut community that you're part of. So whether you are a top 1% IBC transactor, or you tend to restake your staking awards, whereas most of other people tend to just kind of not stake after they claim, or maybe you mint every time there's a new drop coming, or maybe you just tend to hold a lot of tokens in this one specific pool. Being able to provide that context and being able to show off that context is, I think, what's really important and what we want to do. And we have these composable tools in ETH, such as POAP. I think the tooling itself, or building that feature itself, isn't the difficulty here. I think the difficult part is, assuming I have my POAP, like where can I show it off, right? So assuming there is this like new video, gaming chain that drops on Cosmos, and I happen to rank in the top 1%, can I go to gov.osmosis.zone and be able to show off, or credibly show off, that first of all, I am this account, and two, I am the 1% like top ranker. So if you guys are trying to discuss incentives about my game chain token, then my worth is a lot. What I say is worth more because there is that level of like integration between these two features, these chains, not necessarily at the tech like IBC level, but at the user level and the interface level as well. So I think this is kind of a new direction where we've been building Kepler for, I think, almost exactly 2 years now. We actually incorporated in May. The project started a little earlier in 2020, but before we've kind of, we started as a very small team of trying to cater to both developers and users kind of together. But I think the way that we see ourselves going forward now is I think we would like to kind of let these two teams live independent, separate lives. So we'll have a more dedicated team that caters to the needs of other builders, people who are building app chains, who are building maybe some of these new front-end features or front-end applications, but also have a dedicated product team that builds out these kind of user features as well. Because I think, if the ethos of Cosmos was building application-specific blockchains and connecting them over IBC, because I think it's like a very two opposite ideas, right? Like the idea of sovereignty is like independence. You get to choose what you want to do. Don't tell me, don't tread on me. Don't tell me what I can and cannot do. And then on the complete opposite spectrum is like, let's talk to each other on the terms that we agree upon. And I think, in the same way that Cosmos as an ecosystem is designed this way, I think, the user clients and user interfaces kind of have to go the same way, where you build application-specific interfaces, but what connects these, variety of different front-end interfaces and application is at the wallet layer. And I don't know if even like the wallet layer is the right term to use it, because I think the right, term would probably be more like on-chain identity / account layer. So yeah, so for us, I think we believe that a wallet interface will feel more like a Reddit than a Wells Fargo. And I think that's a pretty big departure from a lot of the products that other wallet teams are building. But I think we're in a unique position where we are catering to, first of all, a multi-chain ecosystem, and two, obviously, a very sovereign and interoperable multi-chain ecosystem. So I think there's a lot of nuance of, an ETH user that does this. I think there's a lot more overlap as you in the context of every other ETH user than this one Cosmos user in the context of all the other Cosmos users, because we do have a lot more of a sovereign ecosystem, and being able to kind of show off your cool characteristics and your cool achievements, I think that's a good thing, not a bad thing. So yeah, I think that's where we are headed, and this was just some thoughts that I had. So happy to take some questions here. I know I have about exactly like 2.5 minutes, so. Sweet.
Thank you, Josh.
Awesome.
And we have some questions for you, so if you would mind to stay a little bit on stage for a couple of minutes. So first one, actually a very interesting one, because it's also an obvious one. What is actually the business model of Kepler as a company?
Yeah, so Kepler as a business I think I've been trying to figure this out for the past 2.5 years as well. But I think first of all, what we offer is obviously a curation of which chains we offer. We obviously don't block the use of Kepler extension to anyone. You can just add your own chain in. But I think there is a level of curation that we offer where it's like, hey, we've kind of gone through here, and it's not like this chain just offered us $1 million so they get a spot. There is some level of like filtering and due diligence that we do to make sure that that goes on. And then the other thing, which is pretty interesting, is we started off as a wallet company, and I think currently our biggest team is our infrastructure, where we offer, I think, probably the best in class for Cosmos endpoint infrastructure, scalable, node endpoints running full nodes. And obviously, some chains are more of a struggle than it is for others, but I think those are kind of the two things, and obviously we ask chains to pay for it. In the long term, to be honest, I'm not sure, but I think when you are running the best playground in the entire Cosmos, I think the problem it is a happy problem when you have too many users and you don't exactly know how to make money from that, rather than you know exactly how you want to make money, and then you have no one that wants to use your product. So
Another very interesting question, because it's like a very hot topic right now. Do you plan to launch your own token like MetaMask is doing?
I'm actually just gonna answer no to that. Okay. Straight up no, because I don't want people to like speculate on it. But yeah, I probably shouldn't have said the but part. Yeah, no. Yeah.
Okay, one last question is, are you planning to improve the mobile support?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that we're trying to do is we're trying to turn Chainapsis into more of this like loosely held coalition of different companies working on specific products. So we're actually in the process of kind of spinning off the dashboard team into its own company, working with AlphaWorks, who is currently trying to launch IonDAO very soon. But they're a team of great people who have contributed a lot already, and I think we're going to continue to spin off the dashboard into its own team and make sure there is someone who is a team dedicated to mobile, and they're also kind of have their own path. And Kepler and Chainapsis is more this like loosely held coalition of people and teams that build products for Interchain users.
Sounds good. Josh Lee.
Awesome.